Hi guys, and welcome to this home learning class on the formal elements. We're just going to briefly look at it today, and you'll have a little task to do after the video is completed as well. But don't worry if you don't quite get it yet, because we're going to have plenty of opportunities when we go back to school to really engage with each element. So there are 7 formal elements in art, and what they basically are is the building blocks of art. So these are different types of creative vocabulary that we use when we're describing works of art. So we've got line, shape, form, space, texture, value, and colour. So let's have a look at line then. I'm sure you all know what a line is, but let's think about how a line can look. So it has a starting point. Sometimes it's straight, sometimes they can be horizontal, sometimes wobbly, curvy, dashed, loose, controlled, straight, maybe swirly, thick, thin, etc. Okay? So think about how you use your lines in art. Maybe you use them for your drawings. Maybe you use a different pen to make them thicker. Or maybe you use a fine pencil to make them thin. And then we've got texture. So the texture describes how something feels. In an artwork, usually when we're looking at things, we can almost imagine how they feel. So for example, if we look at the picture on the left-hand side in the top corner, how do you think that would feel? Do you think it would be soft? Do you think it would be bumpy? Rough? You can see in the drawings in the middle how people have created texture using different drawing skills. And in the bottom corner, someone's drawn bricks as well, so you can imagine that they'd be quite rough to touch. Form. And form describes 3-dimensional shapes. So these shapes are not flat, so they almost look as if they're coming out at you off the page. So I just want to play this little video that shows how to draw a cube. So you can see you start off with a 2D shape, which is a square. And then you add lines coming off it. But you have to remember to join up a line between those lines. This is what makes it look 3D. So a form also includes the height, width and depth of an object. So for example, you'd be able to walk around it. But in art, we show this through adding these little lines. Shape. So this is another one that I think we'll all know what it is. But I just want to explain that a shape is a 2D flat object. So unlike the forms, the shape sits flat on the artwork. And there's some examples on the page here of different artworks that have used shapes in them. So the tiger on the bottom is made up of all different kinds of shapes. Value. Value describes the lightness or darkness in an object. For example, in the image on the right hand side, you can see the lighter bits of the swirls going inside and the darker bits almost in the segments coming off the swirl. So some vocabulary that might be used in value is tint, which means you're adding white, shade, which means you're adding black to make something darker, and hue, which is the true colour. So we might also use words like shadow, highlight, and maybe light source as well. Colour. I think you all know what colour is and you probably use it quite a lot. But colour adds interest and mood to our work and is also referred to as hue. So we got the primary colours here, just to remind you, which are red, yellow and blue, and the secondary colours, which are orange, purple and green. Space. So space refers to the emptiness or area around or within objects. If we look at the image in the middle, you might be able to see two things. So the first thing might be a man playing a saxophone, and the second thing might be a woman. This just shows how important space is in our artwork. If we look at the image on the bottom left, you'll be able to see positive space and negative space. Positive space refers to the part of the artwork that takes up the space. So for example, that would be the vase. And negative space refers to the area around that object. So you might be able to see two people. We use space in all different ways in our artwork. For example, we can fill the page completely, or we might want to draw really small, we might want to draw big, we might want to draw in perspective when something is further away. We might want to overlap our drawing, or we might just want to have one object in the middle of our page. Okay, so for your task, what I'd like you to do, on a sheet of paper, create a poster on the formal elements. So I want you to add a title, subheadings, and examples. But I've done a video of this so you are able to see me doing it first, so you know exactly what to do. So what I started off by doing is writing formal elements on my page using a pencil. And then I went over that in some pen and I coloured it in. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. You might just want to write it in one colour. That's up to you. Then I added the subheading line and I drew all kinds of different lines around it, which were dashed, bold, wobbly. It's up to you what you'd like to do around it. Just think about all the different lines you can do and how you can show that in examples. And then we've got texture. So for texture, I decided to do 3 examples. I wanted to show bumpy, spiky, and woven texture. If you're not sure how to do this, go back to the PowerPoint slide on texture and see some of the examples that were on there. Shape. So for my shapes, I drew a circle, a square, a triangle, a rectangle. And then I did value. So I was thinking, how could I show this? I thought maybe I could do a chart. One end is dark and one end is light. Because remember, value refers to the lightness and darkness in an object. So for form, I decided to draw some 3-dimensional shapes like we looked at in the PowerPoint. So I decided to draw a cylinder, a pyramid, a cube, a sphere, a cuboid, and then I did colour. So for colour, I just decided to label some colours that I had available. Maybe you want to use some colouring pens for this. You could draw a rainbow if you wanted to. Just be really creative with how you do it. You might want to draw the primary colours, or you might want to draw a colour wheel. It's up to you. And then finally, space. So this one was a bit more tricky to draw. I just did a perspective drawing, tiny little one of some buildings. And then I also did an example of filling my page. So I just did a tiny little drawing while I filled my paper. And that's basically a high quality example of what I'd like you to do. So this shows some ideas for your poster, 2 different ways. So if you're not very confident at doing bubble writing or large writing and colouring it in, I don't mind if you just write it down with one normal pen, and maybe you just want to do 1 example instead of 3. So there's 2 different posters there for you to look at, and you can decide completely how you would like to do this. And it doesn't have to be a large poster. You can fold an A4 piece of paper in half and just make your poster on one half of the page. And here are some other examples I found online. These ones probably took a lot longer, but they're just really inspirational examples for you, just to give you some ideas if you wanted to do something a bit different. Okay, so I'd love to see what you come up with. Make sure to upload your photos of your work to Teams, and I'll see you all next week. Bye.